Hey guys, today we're going to be taking some notes about severe weather and weather safety. These notes are going to help you with your project that you're going to be doing after this. As you listen to this video, be sure that you're writing down the notes on the paper that you were given, and also be sure to pause it anytime you need more time for your notes or rewind something if you didn't quite catch it. Let's go ahead and get started. So, we would define a storm as a violent disturbance in the atmosphere. You probably can think of many different types of storms. You might mention thunderstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, and winter storms like lake effect snows or blizzards. Those are just a few of the popular ones for us here in the United States. We're going to go through different types of storms and talk about what they are, how they're formed, and some storm safety tips for each one. The first one that we're going to start with is the thunderstorm. A thunderstorm is an intense local storm that forms strong winds, heavy rain, thunder, lightning, and sometimes hail. Do you remember from our cloud lesson what type of clouds form thunderstorms? If you said cumulonimbus, you're absolutely right. Let's talk about how these thunderstorms form. So, storms involve sudden changes of pressure, and this causes rapid air movements. The conditions that bring one kind of storm can often cause other kinds of storms in that same area. For example, the conditions that might cause a thunderstorm also could cause tornadoes in that area. So, let's break it down how that storm forms. So, thunderstorms get their energy from a humid air. That warm, humid air rises and forms the cumulonimbus cloud. When the water vapor condenses into cloud droplets, it releases energy, and that energy increases the air motion and causes the cloud to build up. We have that warm and cool air that mix and create what's called an updraft that builds the storm and the cloud. Now, cold downdrafts bring precipitation and eventually end the storm by preventing more warm air from rising. Sometimes you might have ice form in the top of a cloud. As those ice particles grow large, they begin to fall, and they pull that cool air down with them. That downdraft is what brings heavy rain and brings hail. So that downdraft can actually spread out and can block more warm air from moving upward into the cloud, and that's what actually slows the storm down and ends it. So, as you guys probably know, most thunderstorms usually form on hot, humid afternoons. And we've just finished talking about fronts, so remember that a thunderstorm can also form when that warm air is forced upward along a cold front. So, lightning. We know lightning is defined as a sudden energy discharge between parts of a cloud. So, lightning is when we have areas of positive and negative electrical charges, and they build up in the storm clouds. The upper part of that storm cloud usually carries a positive charge. The lower part of that cloud carries mainly negative charges. Lightning is that big spark that jumps between parts of the cloud or between the cloud and the ground. So, do you know what causes thunder? Thunder is caused by the lightning bolt heating up. A lightning bolt can actually heat the air as much as 30,000 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than the sun's surface. And that air that's rapidly heated expands suddenly and explosively. And thunder is the sound of that exploding air. So remember, because light travels faster than sound, you actually see the lightning before you hear thunder. Have you ever wondered how to calculate a thunderstorm's distance? I remember learning this when I was a kid, and I was always really fascinated by it. So count the seconds between the lightning and the thunder and divide by 5. You can tell if the storm's getting closer or moving farther away by the time interval in between. So if the time interval is increasing, the storm is moving away. If the time interval is decreasing, it's getting closer. So thunder can only be heard from a distance of about 10 to 15 miles away. More than that, and the only thing you see is lightning, and that's what a lot of people call heat lightning. So flash floods are sudden violent floods that occur within a few hours or a few minutes. Sometimes during a thunderstorm we'll have those flash floods. So a few safety tips if you're ever stuck in a thunderstorm. If you're inside the house, if possible, stay inside away from windows. If you're outside, find a low area away from trees, fences, or poles. Remember, lightning is always going to strike the highest object in the area. If you're swimming and you hear thunder, get out of the water. And definitely avoid metals and water, which are good conductors for lightning. Let's move on to tornadoes. So a tornado is a destructive rotating column of air that has very high-speed winds. Sometimes tornadoes are visible as the funnel-shaped cloud that we see a lot of times in TV. So when a tornado forms and it forms over the lake or an ocean, they actually call it a waterspout. Tornadoes can touch the ground for 15 minutes or less, and they can be just a few hundred meters across. Oftentimes, tornadoes have wind speeds of 300 miles an hour. So let's take a look at how these tornadoes form. So we have a thunderstorm, and it meets horizontal winds at very high altitudes. And those winds cause the warm air that's rising in that storm to start to spin. That spinning is what forms the funnel shape with a pressure center that's very low. As the tornado reaches the ground, the high pressure runs into low pressure and causes high winds that can be very destructive and damaging. So here's a true or false question for you here. Tornadoes develop in the same type of clouds that produce thunderstorms. And that is true. We know those are called cumulonimbus clouds. So tornadoes actually have a classification scale, and it's called the Fujita scale. It's named after Dr. Ted Fujita, who pioneered tornado research, including the theory of how they form and the damage that they do. So the damage surveys are done by the local National Weather Service after the tornado is reported. So it's important to understand that this scale is a scale of damage, not a scale of wind speed. So through research, scientists know that it takes a certain amount of wind speed to do a certain amount of damage, so they can actually estimate the wind speed of a tornado fairly accurately. So for example, if they notice that the result of a tornado or a suspected tornado was that it tore off roofs and large trees were taken down, they know that it's a wind speed of about 111 to 135 miles an hour that would do that. And they would classify it as an EF2, Enhanced Fujita 2. Okay, if there's just some minor roof damage and maybe some branches about, they know that it's a wind speed of 65 to 85 miles an hour that would cause that kind of damage, and therefore it would get a rating of an EF0. Tornadoes in the United States are most common in an area called Tornado Alley. So during a tornado, it's definitely the safest to be in the basement if you have one, or a storm shelter. A lot of houses out in the Midwest have these because they're more prone to getting tornadoes, especially if you live in that tornado alley area. You want to make sure that you stay away from windows and doors, and the reason is because of the flying debris if the window or the door get broken into. Lie on the floor under a piece of furniture. That'll protect your head and protect your body from getting hit by something. And if you happen to be outside and can't seek shelter, make sure that you find a low, flat area like a ditch to lay down in. Not super comfortable, but it will keep you safe, and that's your best chances of survival. All right, next we're going to talk about hurricanes. So hurricanes are tropical low pressure systems, and they have winds blowing at speeds of 119 kilometers per hour, which is about 74 miles per hour. So if you take a look at this picture here, this is actually satellite radar, and you can see the tornado forming, and it's right in the Gulf Coast. This part of the tornado here, I'm sorry, the hurricane, oh gosh, I said tornado. This part of the hurricane here is called the eye, okay? Now, the eye of the tornado is the center of the tornado, and the winds are going to be the strongest in the narrow band around the center of the storm here, okay? Because it's a rotating column of air, the wind blows toward the center, and it blows counterclockwise toward the area of lowest pressure. The eye of the hurricane has lighter winds and fairer weather. So when the eye arrives to the area that's having the hurricane, the weather changes very suddenly. And because there's no wind in that area, the air grows very calm and the sky clears. And after the eye passes, the storm will resume, but the winds blow from the opposite direction. The eye of the hurricane can be dangerous for the reason that some people think that the hurricane's already over with. They go outside, they start doing a little bit of cleanup, and bam, without thinking or without warning, they get hit with the backside of that hurricane. So even though there's no wind, it's always important to remember that it's still going to be very dangerous winds approaching soon. So hurricanes form by getting their energy from warm, humid air at the surface of the ocean. As the air rises and clouds form, more air gets taken into this hurricane system. And inside the storm, we have bands of high winds and heavy rains. And those winds always spiral inward toward the area of lowest pressure, just like our winds are always going from high to low. Now, hurricanes, the winds can be very, very damaging. But another thing that's really damaging with the hurricanes is actually something called the storm surge. And you've probably heard this if you followed hurricanes such as Katrina. The storm surge is a dome of water that sweeps across the coast where the hurricane lands. So the storm surges are frequently the most devastating part of that hurricane. As a hurricane's winds spiral around and around the storm, they push the water into a big mound at the storm's center. And this becomes really dangerous when the storm reaches land because it causes major flooding along the coast. So hurricane safety, if there is a hurricane warning and you're told to evacuate, you definitely need to leave immediately. If you live in an area where hurricanes are prone to happen, make sure you have a disaster plan. And always make sure that you stay indoors until it's safe to come outside. Lastly, stay away from flooding and areas with standing water. You never know when there's down power lines that could transmit electric shock. So it's very important. All of these different types of storms have guidelines. And the last thing we're going to talk about today is the difference between a storm watch and a storm warning. Sometimes you might notice on your cell phone, you might hear that there is a thunderstorm watch or a thunderstorm warning or a tornado watch or a warning. So the big idea is this. With a watch, it means that the conditions are favorable or possible for that storm to occur. A warning means that severe weather's already been spotted. It's been spotted in the sky or it's been spotted on Doppler radar. The threat's imminent. It's coming. It's on its way. A warning is more severe than a watch. I'd seen it once shown with tacos. So imagine if you're having tacos for dinner and you have all the ingredients out on the counter getting ready to make tacos. So you have the meat, you have the shells, you have the lettuce, you have the cheese, you have your sauce. It's all sitting there in piles. Okay, it's not a taco yet, but everything there to make the tacos is ready to go. That's your storm watch. It's favorable. Your warning is the taco made up and you can eat it. Okay, it's already there. It's happening. I'm going to eat that taco. So if you did not get any of the notes, make sure you go back and re-listen to this presentation as many times as you need to so you're ready to get on to the second part. When your notes are finished, please bring them up so I can check them and give you the instructions you need for the next piece.